Right, so this has now been trimmed off with the chainsaw, and I've drilled a 7.5mm hole in the middle, and we're ready to try and put this on a screw chuck. Right. My friendly assistant Simon,
Afternoon.
is here to help out. So you can do this with a face plate if this doesn't take. Because sometimes I find with screw chucks I can't quite manage to get it to go on as I would like it to go on. I can always put a screwed face plate on. This is quite significantly out of balance, so we're going to have a dancing lathe. First thing you've got to do is turn the shape of the outside of the very first bowl and put a big ass tenon on the bottom so that you can grip it ready to turn out the inside. And because the torsion on the bowl saver can be quite significant, you need a big chuck on here. If you can't get a decent chucking method on here with deep gripper jaws, you haven't got any, you can waste a chunk of the bottom and put a face plate on with screws. Now that's obviously the safest way of doing it, but then of course you're going to lose an inch of the... So I've put a very large record powered dovetail jaws on, ready for the tenon.
So with it mounted on the screw chuck and with the tailstock brought up, this is probably only doing about 250 revs because it's really out of kilter. I probably should have put it on the bandsaw, but the height of it is right at the limit of my bandsaw getting through it. Anyway, gently does it a little at a time. After the first few seconds of turning, I realised this was going to be heavy going, so I've stopped and actually tightened up the Allen key on the chuck to ensure that with it being so heavy and out of balance, there's no potential for the chuck to come unspiraled off the headstock. With it being so out of balance, I'm making sure that I'm attacking the wood with the gouge over the centre, over the tool post. If you have a rather large heavy bite and you're right at the limit of the tool rest, there's a good chance you'll snap a long tool rest like this. So a bit of care and caution, and taking sort of sweeping nibbling cuts seem to work quite well when it's this out of balance. Just watch out for the bevel and don't get a catch. This took a fair amount of time, as you'd imagine. The wood is really very wet, and we're actually getting a light spray of water coming out of the particularly the end grain as I'm cutting it. But I'm slowly getting there. I'm up to about 500 RPM at the moment, so just onwards and upwards. As the bowl shape starts to emerge, I can start doing the push cuts from the bottom, which is going to give me more control and some decent shavings. As you can see there, starting to get some proper spirals now that I'm having a proper cut from the bottom to the top. And now quickly switch to cleaning up the bottom and measuring up and forming the tenon. As usual, when scribing the bottom with a pair of dividers like this, only touch the front side on the wood and use the rear one just as a sighter. Don't touch the two together, otherwise it gets very exciting. So I've put a dovetail tenon on the bottom that's about as deep as I can make it to match the large dovetail jaws. So now carry on with some more shaping, trying to do some more push cuts from the bottom of the bowl, as pushing from the bottom to the top will give us a better finish on the cuts.
So Simon, you just asked me a question. So what was the question?
The question was, why not for this piece, because of its weight and size, use a faceplate as opposed to a screw chuck?
Well, it's a very good question, and the only answer I've got is that by using a screw chuck, we've got one hole in the middle, and that means that when the bowl's hollowed out, I haven't got screw holes to worry about. If I actually used a big faceplate, which is a 5-inch one, then the screw holes would be going in. Screws would be going about that deep. So you'd have some limitations on the smallest bowl, because you'd have to respect the screw holes. So as it is, with just a single hole in the middle, I'm hoping that I don't have that problem.
Okay, so if it wasn't being done with a bowl saver, in other words, to get a number of bowls out of this one piece, a faceplate might be better.
The faceplate's always got to be safer, because it's got, depending on how many screws you put in, 4, 6 or 8, and it ain't going to go anywhere. I mean, I don't myself use the screw chuck hardly at all, because I just don't find, although a lot of people find it's quicker, I just don't find the grip as comforting. So
I agree.
So I'm just going to give this one final cut, and then we'll get onto the bowls. Have a cup of coffee and get the bowl saver.
So the boss has gone to make a cup of coffee, and I've been left with the lathe. And what I'm going to do simply is just to take off the bowl from the screw chuck and remount it on the other jaws the other way around, with any luck. So there, unscrewing it. There we go. Next chuck. It'll do up the grub screw. So in it goes. Bring up the tailstock just to give it stability.
Well, with the able assistance of my able assistant, we're now ready to just tidy up the face and eventually get on with bringing up the bowl saver. Bottom dressed off, I'm now going to do a dovetail mortise to receive one of the other chucks, so that I've got the ability to rechuck each of the bowl blanks as they are generated. Otherwise, when you use the bowl saver, if you're not careful, you have got a bowl that you can't easily regrip.
The next stage, after I've turned out the bowls, is that this needs to be able to be gripping the piece that comes out. So that's what that's for. So the next thing is to actually get the bowl saver out. Okay, so this is the Woodcut Bowl Saver. This is I think it's called the Woodcut 2000. So it's the equivalent of the so-called standard version that you get. You can either get ones with 2 or 3 cutters. You've got these cutting arms. They come with what they call a steelite or stellite tip on them, which is either hardened, it's not carbide, it's a super hardened steel. The base is mild steel. This is quite heavily worn as a tip, so I've recently had to grind back some of the body here in order to make sure that some of the tip is exposed. I don't know when this starts to cut, which will become obvious. One of them is an active cutter. In this case it's the big one that we'll be doing first. The second one you basically just store on the frame out of the way. You can actually take it off, it doesn't have to be there. You want the one out the way upside down so that you don't back your hand on the tip, and you want the other one with the tip facing upwards. So the unit, when you get it to start with, you have to buy the tool post to suit your own tool post. It doesn't come, I don't think, as part of it. It has a collar on it, and the whole rig goes in the tool post accordingly. The collar at the bottom is designed so that you set that so that the whole rig has the center of the tip. That tip needs to be on dead center. You can adjust the height of it by setting this up with a drive on the headstock and setting that up so that's dead center. I set that up earlier on, so I know that that is actually on dead center. These tips you're supposed to sharpen upwards with a diamond hone and only touch them on a very low gripped wheel when you have to. The top is supposed to have a slight concave profile, which you can dress by touching it on a wheel held up that way so that the wheel just produces a slight concave top. Don't sharpen it on the top, sharpen it on the face. I think this is all down to the shape of it, meaning that you get an edge, a slight edge and a slight edge, so that, no, that one doesn't see. Yeah. So that when you cut on the two tips with the middle clearing. If you go straight in with a completely flat top, then you're shoving a 6 or 7 mil cutter straight in and it will judder. May still judder, we don't know. The whole device rotates and rests upon this sort of hard plastic block. So what you have to do is, first of all, you've got to work out how many bowls you think you're going to have on out of the block of wood, and give yourself some markings accordingly. So I'm not holding this up to do anything other than just use it as a rest. So my first bowl, I'm going to make it about, I don't know, what's that, 25 mil thick. You need to mark it out because you've got to allow the thickness of the cutter so you can work out how many bowls you want to save. You don't want to be too greedy, but sorry, I should have done this with this off, but I'm just using this as a tool rest. So I'm going to say the next one's going to be about there. So the next bowl, let's just get one more out of it, because I will have a thinner one. So we're going to go about there, and then the cutter will be about there. So I'll have 1, 2, 2 cuts, 3 bowls. Be a very small bowl, the one in the middle. That's approximately what we're going to aim to do. So you set the rig up by bringing the tip to the cutting point to start with. Then you get given these paper templates which come with it. One is bigger than the other, which is for the bigger cutter, and the other one is for the smaller cutter. The intention of this is that you need to get the arc of rotation to match the shape of your bowl. So you can do this with feeler gauges, but you can possibly read on there, the light might be burning out, base of bowl and center of bolt. So what you've got to try and do is get the distance from here. Sorry, the camera. That's it. The distance between there and there is the radius of the cut. When you get a one with the 3 arms on it, you get 3 of these, and the last one is bigger because it goes on the outside. It's a different rig. So in this case, because this is quite a deep bowl, this is 6 inches deep, and the diameter of this from one to the other is 5.5 inches. I've got to try and get this basically as close to the center as I can in order to get it to where I want it to be. Now this tip is in the bloody way, so I've got to slacken that off and put that, the tip needs to be inside, the tip of the dormant one, the one you're not using, needs to be inside the frame so it doesn't do what just did then, which is to foul the block. Fiddly to start with. Okay, so we've now set this up so that this is actually as close as I can get to the face of this bowl, because it's slightly deeper than optimum with this. This has now all got to be steadied up so you can actually use it. So you get this Morse taper end, which once this is all set up so that the so this is all on dead center, this should be able to pop in without any problem, and that then holds the frame steady. So you need to pop that in there, tighten the tailstock, then that's tight, that's tight, that's tight. This is just touching something, but it's only just rubbing. And then the principle is that you rotate this round and cut the core out. That's about 600 RPM. But when you do this, you need to apply a bit of downward pressure on the cutter, because this has got quite a lever arm and will chatter, so that as it rubs across on the thrust block, it doesn't actually vibrate too much. So you can already hear and see that you're starting to get proper shavings as you come round the corner. Fairly noisy. Keep clearing it out. Gentle cut. That's when you can shear the tenon if you don't take it delicately.
Right. Yeah.
Very horrible. I think I'm going to have to tighten this block up.
Yeah.
Put a lot more weight behind it, so get through it quickly.
Hmm.
I think is the answer. This is
No,
almost gone,
isn't it?
but I need to advance the cutter just a little bit because it's not getting all the way through. So I just need to pull this out a bit more. Right, so let's pull it. After I managed to get the Morse taper freed out, lo and behold, we have a bowl and another bowl. Oh, that was hard work. Just to finish the demonstration, we will now mark up where jaws 1 and 2 are. There. But I'm going to leave this on this chuck because the turning the other bit is using a different chuck.
So swapping chuck jaws over, now putting it onto the mortise, ready to actually turn a fresh tenon on the bottom of the saved inner core, so that can then be turned around again and we can then mount it again with the bowl saver.
Right, we've got to swap the cutters over. So I'm going to leave that out. There's no need to have it. Okay, so we have to bring the cutting tip around, tips in the right place, and we get the other jig, and I have to get the center to be on the base, on the bottom of the bowl. Now, when we did this before, we needed to get this as close as possible because I was right at the limit of it. Now I need to move this further out, otherwise it will be going through the bottom. So you need to keep the tip in the same location. So the reason all these slidey stuff is there, all the adjustment, is to allow for all this to sort of find the right place. So just I'm going to do this at about 800 or 900 revs because it's a smaller bowl.
Not completely sure why, but a combination of the smaller bowl, the perhaps slightly sharper cutter, and the slightly faster speed meant that this all went through in about a minute or so. This is speeded up 4 times, but it was very easy doing this one. The first one was quite hard work getting around the corner with it, but this was nice and simple and quick and easy.
Yeah, it's quite loose. See?
That's
Yeah,
it.
done. Neat.
So let's just pull this away.
It's easy, wasn't it?
It was easy using the knockout bar, definitely.
Nice.
There we have another one. So that was a lot easier at that diameter, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
much easier.
It was much more the right size.
Now, if you wanted to do a third one, would you have to have a different jig?
You could possibly get another one out of it.
But where would you position that?
It would have to be on the same one, and you'd
okay.
end up with, instead of it being parallel, because obviously if you're cutting on the inside of that radius, you need a smaller cutter. But I've done it before by positioning it. You end up with thicker at the bottom, so you end up with a scallop. So you don't fully follow the instructions. You keep the center further away.
But of course, the thickness of this would be uniform, wouldn't it?
Because
it's being cut.
we've just done the outer and the inner.
Yeah,
exactly.
And how much thicker is that at the base?
It's about
it is, isn't it?
It's about 3/4 of an inch thicker.
Yeah.
But in terms of moderately successful,
It's nice markings.
we've got 3 bowls.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is that the markings will all go with each other.
And how are you going to mount that if you want to turn that?
Well, because I've still got the tenon, I can put it on there. So the mortise, sorry. I'll just put a new tenon on the bottom of there.
Yeah.
Which really I need to do before I go much further. But at the moment, this is on that chuck. So really, what I want to do now is hollow this out so it's uniform thickness, and then reuse the chuck jaws in gripper mode there. Turn a new tenon on there, and then I'll have 3 tenons on 3 pieces. Well, a mortise on that one, tenon on that one, and probably a tenon on here, and hollow that out. And then that's job to good.
Very nice.